Good morning, everybody. The meeting of the House Climate and Energy Finance and Policy Committee is called to order. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to get right to the roll and then take testimony. Mr. Hermanson, please take the roll.
Chair Long.
Present.
Vice Chair Acom.
Present.
Minority Lead Swedzinski. Minority Lead Swedzinski.
Present.
Representative Bierman.
Present.
Representative Bowe.
Present.
Representative Christensen.
Present.
Representative Franson. Representative Franson. Representative Gruenhagen.
Present.
Representative Hollins.
Present.
Representative Hornstein.
Present.
Representative Igo.
Present.
Representative Lee.
Present.
Representative Lippertz.
Present.
Representative Liz Lagarde.
Present.
Representative Meckland.
Present.
Representative Munson.
Present.
Representative Stevenson.
Present.
We have a quorum. Thank you all for being here. This is the second in our opening series of hearings. On Tuesday, we heard about the impact that climate change is having in communities around the state. And today we're going to hear some success stories from climate change actors who are working in our state to try to address the challenge of climate change. And I think it's going to be an exciting hearing. So we're going to get right to it. Please hold all questions until the end. We're going to begin with Amelia Sterling Hennis. If you could unmute yourself and begin.
Hello, everyone. I'm just sharing my screen. Thank you to Chair Long and committee members for inviting us to testify today. We are honored to kick things off, and we also want to extend our appreciation for giving us the opportunity to share this video that we produced this fall. My name is Amelia Sterling Hennis, and I'm the Director of Communications and Public Affairs at Clean Energy Economy Minnesota, or CEAM. We are an industry-led nonprofit organization, and we represent the business voice of clean energy in Minnesota. We work to help educate Minnesotans about the economic benefits of transitioning to a clean energy economy. Following the civil unrest this summer, our organization decided to be more intentional about seeking out interesting and innovative ways our clean energy businesses are engaged in equity work across the state. We were introduced to the Red Lake Nation through our members, IPS Solar, as they helped the tribe work toward their goal of energy sovereignty. So the video that we're about to play represents hope, and it also offers a potential new pipeline of career training in northern Minnesota. Finally, it shows what can happen when you bring together passion, expertise, and a willingness to think outside the box. And with that, let's play the video.
Mike, I don't think we're getting audio. You'll need to share your audio as well. Now we are.
My hope, my dream for Red Lake is for this to be a model for other tribes to follow. And so that's what's really exciting about all this, and that our people can go ahead and get the knowledge around this technology and being a part of all of this new renewable energy Green Deal that's going to be happening. I feel like renewable energy is going to do is it's going to be this driver of change and prosperity in ways that tribal nations have never seen it before.
My vision is that we provide all the energy for our membership free. So they don't have to pay nothing. So they don't have to worry about getting disconnected. This is the vision.
Daryl, thinks about making decisions 7 generations ahead. And that's the way our people used to do it. We used to think 7 generations ahead, not this 4 quarters, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. That's so narrow-minded. We have to think about what's it going to be like in the future. What are we going to have for our children? What are we going to have for our grandchildren? What kind of world are they going to inherit?
Pretty much everybody I've ever sold solar to in the Twin Cities, where it's always about the payback. Okay, how long is it going to take me to, recoup my investment? Right from the beginning of my involvement, payback was in terms of, are we going to be able to prevent the buildup of mercury in Red Lake so that people can continue eating fish? Because that's the livelihood of many people in the community. Now that, to me, that's the way to define payback. Because not only is this about going solar, it's about economic development and job creation. And so building skill sets so that as the skill sets develop, individuals in the community or crews like Bob Blake's crew are able to move into the market of solar installation. Now that's also something that the community offers to the larger world. And it's an income generator and job creator.
This is our land, and this is where our kids are going to grow up. In future generations, we got to keep it as natural as possible. Like the heritage, everything and traditions we have is mostly important to keep it like that.
When you give people purpose, when you give people the ability to get up and do something that they love every day, I think that's how you battle alcoholism. I think that's how you battle drug addiction. I think that's how you battle missing murdered Indigenous women. I'm taking a swing. I could be wrong. You know what I mean? But damn it, if I'm wrong, then I want to be wrong and trying to do something positive for the environment and for the world. You know what I mean? So let me be wrong there, okay? But if there's a side opportunity here where we can go ahead and change the fortunes of a community because of renewable energy, then let's do it. I love Red Lake people. I love Native people. And I just want the best for them. I really do. I'm so proud to be from Red Lake. One of the greatest things is being able to serve your community, to be able to serve the tribe. And I just have so much unconditional love for this place, so much unconditional love.
Thank you so much for sharing that terrific video. And now we're going to turn it over to Robert Blake himself to talk more about the project. Robert, if you can unmute yourself and begin.
Ani, bonjour, everyone. My name is Robert Blake, and I'm a tribal citizen of the Red Lake Nation and proud Minnesotan. Owner of Solar Bear and executive director of Native Sun Community Power Development. Being a part of the Red Lake Solar Project is a dream come true. I believe that renewable energy, specifically solar energy, can cure a human health crisis, like the one taking place in tribal communities all across this country. This solar project is more than just another renewable energy project. It will provide jobs, education, economic development, and above all else, like I said in the video, purpose. I saw a statistic by NIAGA, the Native American Indian Gaming Association, that $8 billion is brought into the local communities by gaming and tribal casinos. I believe that by tribal communities having their own power source, like the possibility maybe of a tribal utility, could literally be the catalyst to a brighter future. We want what everyone else wants, and that is to raise our families in peace and to watch our children and grandchildren grow up to be productive citizens of society. I cannot express to you the difference that a tribal utility would make in our communities. I'm asking the state in partnership with all 11 tribal nations to form a tribal energy advisory group. This group will be an example of how tribes and states can work together for the betterment of all our communities. I'm hoping that by our leadership here in the state of Minnesota, that this could possibly be replicated across the country And this will definitely be able to be the opportunity that I think that tribal nations specifically need around renewable energy, jobs, and of course, obviously the disparities that are plaguing our communities. Miigwech, and thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you so much for being with us today, Robert, and for sharing the exciting work and project you're doing. Next, we're going to hear from John Brekke, the Vice President and Chief Power Supply Officer with Great River Energy. John, please unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, we're pleased to be on your agenda today. Thank you for inviting us to speak. I'm John Brekke with Great River Energy. I'm the Vice President and Chief Power Supply Officer. I've been with the company for 15 years. We're really proud and pleased to be a Minnesota-based company. We have 28 member distribution cooperatives that are all Minnesota-based. Our board of directors is elected from those cooperatives. We have a 24-member board that governs GRE, and those cooperatives serve about 60% of the land area of the state of Minnesota. So we're a Minnesota company at our core, and we're governed by Minnesotans. We have 650 megawatts of renewables in our portfolio today, and we've just announced within the last year a very exciting transformation in our power supply portfolio. We're shutting down the largest coal plant in North Dakota, Coal Creek Station, by 2023. That's an 1,100 megawatt coal facility. We're converting the Spiritwood Combined Heat and Power Station, which is 99 megawatts, from coal to natural gas, and that'll happen at the same time. We're adding another 1,100 megawatts of wind energy to replace the energy that's lost from Coal Creek when that shuts down. So that'll bring our portfolio to a total of 1,800 megawatts of wind in Minnesota, South Dakota, Iowa, and North Dakota. And we're investing in our existing natural gas peaking fleet in Minnesota to maintain reliability and increase capacity using some of the existing infrastructure and transmission connections that we have. The key driver of all of these changes is the economic best interest of our member cooperatives, and that's what drove our decision. But we're mindful of the big benefit on carbon reduction. We will be at a 95% carbon reduction since 2005 at the end of 2022. Now that's well beyond the state's goal of 80% carbon reduction in current law. So we're very proud of that, and our carbon risk is going down as a result of it, but our decision was driven by economics. If you look at what's happening in the current power market, of course, there's a lot of renewables being added to the grid. That's been moderating prices and driving prices down in the wholesale electricity markets. What's also driving prices is natural gas. And natural gas is very cheap, abundant, and affordable right now, especially during non-polar vortex conditions. But even in the wintertime, we've seen very modest natural gas prices, and that helps keep wholesale prices affordable. The MISO market acts like a big battery. The wholesale market is a big battery for GRE, and we're able to do that 1,800 megawatts of wind and serve our members without a coal plant because of our involvement in that MISO energy market. So that's an important part of the change. Now, we were at a unique point in making this transformation. It's a major transformation. It's our last coal resource, and it's going away. We were facing an economically challenged plant, and that created the opportunity to make the decision. But we were also seeing opportunities for low-cost renewable energy, and we took advantage of it. We pounced on those opportunities and added this wind to our portfolio. And while that worked out really well in the current market, we do have some reasons to be concerned about the future cost of renewable energy, and we should all be mindful of that. Production tax credits are declining and possibly being phased out. Transmission costs are a factor. Interconnection costs are going up for large wind facilities and solar facilities. Congestion costs are an issue on the difference between the market value of the wind energy or solar where it's produced and the cost of serving our customers where they're consuming the energy. And finally, market effects. You have market effects when it's windy outside, the value of energy is lower. That the same thing is going to be true eventually with solar, the more that we add to the system. Those can be good things if we develop storage in the long term that's cost effective. So GRE is proud to announce a pilot project for long duration storage. This will be in Cambridge, Minnesota. It's the first of its kind, 1 megawatt, 150 hour battery capability, enough to carry you through a polar vortex. And as Minnesotans, we should be proud that co-ops in Minnesota are behind an effort like that. So we're working with Form Energy. It's a startup company developing this technology. The point of this technology is to be really cheap, long duration utility scale storage to enable transformation of the grid. And finally, how can Minnesota be helpful in this transformation? And I think it's important that the state recognize the importance of reliability on that peaking generation fleet. The MISO market is our battery. The peaking fleet represents the capacity, the ability to meet the peak demand needs in the wintertime and the summertime and maintain system reliability. And we can't lose sight of that. That's very important to preserve. And it has hardly any carbon in it. We'll be at well over 95% carbon reduction with this plan. Until there's long duration storage that's 100 megawatts in size or 1,000 megawatts in size, we need these peaking plants available to the grid. Secondly, to recognize the importance of the interstate wholesale market, the MISO market being our big battery, we need to be able to trade and flow power between states to be cost effective in this market. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today. We're excited about our transformation. We're mindful of challenges going forward, and we look forward to partnering with the state of Minnesota and its leadership and its citizens. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you for the incredible leadership that Great River Energy is showing, and congratulations on the exciting announcement.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to hear from David Mortensen, the chairman of Mortensen Company. David, please unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you, Chairman Long. Thank you, committee, for having me here. I'm third generation. My grandfather started this construction business in 1954. Today, we're a $5 billion a year business with over 7,000 team members. The largest single portion of our business today is renewable energy, accounting for about a third of all of our business. And really started when we set our first wind turbine back in 1995 for Xcel Energy. It was a 250 kilowatt hour turbine. Today, the turbines we're erecting are 3,500 kilowatt turbines. So you can see the technology advancement, and I'll talk a little bit about the subsequent cost reductions that have resulted. But there are three things, and Great River Energy really highlighted the number one thing driving renewable energies. It's economics. It's simple. It's more cost effective to put wind energy, and it's growing, solar is growing in that same direction, than it is to deliver coal or natural gas power to the grid. Give you an example. In 2009, this is just 11 years ago, it would have cost a utility about $135 a megawatt to buy wind energy. In 2019, that cost was somewhere between $15 and $20 a megawatt. That's cheaper than coal. And you know the input costs forever because they're free, and you don't have to deal with the back end detrimental impacts of environmental impacts. So number one, economics. Number two, customer demand. Great River Energy, Xcel, Minnesota Power just announced their focus. 85% of customers are saying they want more renewable energy. That's both residential customers and business customers. And then three, just 10 years ago, most utilities would have told you that we could not take more than 20% renewables on the grid and in our operational structure. And that's totally changed because they've been able to adapt to these new technologies and put enough diversity on the system. So if the wind isn't blowing in southwestern Minnesota, they can use the wind turbines in western or eastern North Dakota. And those three things have made substantial growth. Right now today, the wind energy industry employs 120,000 people across the United States. In construction in Minnesota, that number is between 1,500 and 2,000. The solar industry today employs 250,000 people in the United States, and that's growing. Most of you probably don't realize that nearly half of all the wind installed in the US in the last 10 years have been done by Minnesota companies. And I tell you that because Minnesota was on the forefront of establishing a renewable energy standard, encouraging utilities to experiment with renewables. So companies came alongside our utility partners to help. We have that same opportunity to prepare for tomorrow's future. And part of tomorrow's future is battery storage. We're actually installing what our customer is saying is the world's largest combined solar and energy power solution in the world in Central California. That battery storage plant is 300 plus megawatts of battery storage. And the costs are coming down and the technology is advancing quickly. Our opportunity in Minnesota is to encourage that same thing and help put Minnesota companies on the forefront of what that future is. And we're going to see the same thing with electric vehicles. I know that's often a difficult topic, but when General Motors commits that they're not going to build another combustion engine after 2025, that is a market-driven decision because it's going to be cheaper to both build and operate electric cars. And we have a chance to be on the forefront of building that infrastructure in Minnesota to be prepared. So companies like our St. Cloud-based electric bus company can also be a leader in producing electric transportation across the country. It's an exciting time. The future has moved faster than we expected. And we're proud to be part of it and to be a Minnesota-based company. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mortensen, for being here. And that number you shared, the nearly half of all wind in the last 10 years and across the country installed by Minnesota companies is just astounding. So congratulations on all the amazing work that your company has done and all the jobs that's created for Minnesotans. And I know that Mr. Mortensen has to leave. We are holding questions for the end. I've seen a couple of hands. We'll get to those folks when we turn to questions. Next, we have before us Kevin Pranis with Laborers International Union. Kevin, if you could unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you very much, Chair Long, committee members. Appreciate the opportunity. My name is Kevin Pranis. I'm the marketing manager for Lyona, Minnesota, and North Dakota, a union of more than 12,000 proud construction laborers who build and maintain our state's transportation, water, energy, and building infrastructure alongside our building trades colleagues. As we know, our world and our jobs are changing as the public and private sectors across the globe pursue decarbonization. And our organization is committed to ensuring those changes make our state, our industries, and our workforce stronger, more prosperous, and more competitive. And specifically to making sure that energy continues to create high quality family supporting jobs for Minnesotans. For decades, our men and women have worked alongside our building trades brothers and sisters to build and safely maintain our fleet of conventional and nuclear plants, and a growing number of members are employed in wind and solar energy installation. When it comes to energy, we have a simple principle. Clean energy jobs should be just as good and as available to local workers as jobs in conventional and nuclear energy that have supported generations of Minnesotans and their families. And I'm happy to report here for Climate Successes that we've made a lot of progress in this area over the past few years, resulting in the creation of hundreds of family supporting construction jobs that have been concentrated in greater Minnesota and the promise of thousands more in coming years. 5 years ago, as investments in wind energy were ramping up across the nation, we took a hard look at utility scale clean energy construction projects in Minnesota, and what we saw wasn't pretty. Wind projects that were supposed to be providing opportunity for local workers were overwhelmingly being filled by out-of-state workers, costing local communities tens of millions of dollars in lost wages and economic activity. And I should point out those were not projects that were being built by Mortensen, which has been a good local employer committed to putting Minnesotans to work on these projects and a partner. Fortunately, thanks to the efforts of building trade unions, the clean energy industry, including Clean Grid Alliance, utilities, advocates, and Minnesota's Public Utilities Commission, we've seen a significant shift to overwhelming reliance on skilled local workforce in just a few years. Together with clean energy partners, Xcel Energy, Great River Energy, Minnesota Power, and Minnesota Municipal Power Agency have built or committed to more than 2,000 megawatts of wind and solar energy that has been built or will be built by largely local skilled workforce, creating good jobs and supporting local families, as well as an additional hundreds, potentially thousands of megawatts being developed by independent power producers, many of which can be profitably exported to customers in other states that are struggling to meet clean energy goals, creating this as an export economy in which Minnesota can lead. Minnesota's leadership in prioritizing good local clean energy jobs has been recognized by Ceres, which is the leading national voice for corporate and investor sustainability, and recently issued a report calling on others to follow Minnesota's example by prioritizing good jobs and local workers as the only way to sustainably accomplish this transition and beneficially accomplish this transition. And as a construction union, we don't think there's ever a bad time to create high quality construction jobs, especially in greater Minnesota. But those jobs are needed now more than ever as our members and construction workers generally face an ugly construction cliff and what could be some very lean years if the experience of the last Great Recession is any guide. We could have many members out of work. And one of the bright spots for this is energy infrastructure investment, particularly investment in renewable energy across southern Minnesota. And we have members who have been at the work in the last couple of years who are getting family sustaining work. Great River Energy's commitment, 700 megawatts of wind over the next 3 years in Minnesota, creating more than 700 jobs. Xcel's recently approved repowering of an additional 700 megawatts of wind, $750 million invested in creating good jobs across southern Minnesota. These are going to make all the difference to families that otherwise will struggle for work. Stacy Carrolls, who's a member of ours and the president of the building trades of Mankato, lives in Representative Munson's district, talks about how difficult we think the next few years will be. These jobs are great jobs occurring in greater Minnesota, and it's only happening because of the efforts. I just speak to one of our members, Julie Kint, who lives in Delavan and comes from Southwest Minnesota, who talked about how proud she feels to be basically helping this beautiful planet and making a living and hoping to finish out her retirement working on wind if she gets the opportunity for the next 5 years. We have all kinds of members like that and new entrants that are coming into the workforce, excited to be doing this work. The reason it's important for this committee is because you'll be considering legislation that can help create those opportunities. And so we would simply flag bills like Clean Energy First that would help prioritize local workers that Representative Stevenson has introduced, as well as the Natural Gas Innovation Act that provides opportunities to do the same thing on the natural gas side, to do those innovations that help create jobs. And we thank the committee very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Pranis. Next, we're going to hear from Andy Snope with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. Andy, please unmute yourself and begin.
Good morning, Chair Long and committee members. Thanks for having me participate today. My name is Andy Snope. I represent electricians in IBEW Local 292. We have about 5,000 members, and we work all over the state. Together, there are about 14,000 members in the IBEW who reside in the state of Minnesota and work in the state of Minnesota. Our members perform work installing, maintaining energy systems all over the state of Minnesota. The installation of solar systems, energy efficiency, electrical vehicle infrastructure have benefited our members. Climate change must be addressed. There is a transition to cleaner energy, and IBEW Local 292 members have provided the skill, trained workforce to help with that transition to a more energy efficient and cleaner energy production world. When you think about clean energy, think about high wage and benefited careers. The developers and contractors our members have worked for prioritize highly skilled, educated electricians that are able to get the job done on time, under budget, and without any problems on the install. We began the training in electrification, efficiency, and energy production from solar many years ago. In fact, we established a workforce of trained in solar installations before the industry and some of our contractors realized that it would become a staple for our industry. As a result, we have seen a success story in that the move to a cleaner power production environment has led to good jobs for our members. In 2012 and 2013, we worked with clean energy stakeholders to advocate for legislation to provide incentives for solar power production. Initiatives such as community solar gardens, solar rewards program, and the Made in Minnesota Solar Incentive Program. As a direct result, those programs have resulted in countless hours of work for our members. As we continue to make a further transition to renewable carbon-free power development and electrification, we'd like to see a high emphasis to help create good jobs, high benefited local jobs. This can take a small bite out of the economy of good jobs being lost by replacing the jobs in the legacy power generating industry. When you think of renewable energy, optimization, and building efficiency, think of creating jobs for Minnesotans in the construction industry. But we must also not forget that there is a significant job loss in the loss of legacy energy production. We would ask that you consider requirements of prevailing wage and apprenticeship training for workers who are building out our renewable carbon-free power development. Prevailing wage would help to assure the developers and contractors are paying local area labor wage and benefit standards, further assuring that out-of-state developers and contractors are not undercutting our local Minnesota contractors who are bidding on these projects. Apprenticeship training and job supervision assures that training for a career in the electrical industry, not just in racking panels. The IBEW provides training for workers for a career in the electrical industry. When one aspect of our industry experiences a slowdown, another part of our industry in which we train may be in an upswing. Our career training helps to even out those industry declines to provide for a diverse skill within the industry. We would never be asking for any public funding for our training. In fact, another element of our success is that our industry provides itself on funding of our own training programs. A highly skilled, diverse training program funded by an equal contribution from our members and the contractors we work for. I'm a product of that training with 31 years in the industry, only 10 years as a legislative advocate. This fall, I took a break from the legislative political work and went back into the field to work on a large solar installation in Stewart, Minnesota. I was very impressed with the skill and efficiency in which my fellow IBEW members constructed that installation. Because of the years of the exceptional training I received, I was able to pick it all up right back where I left off. Thank you again for allowing me to testify and introduce myself today. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm always available at any time for any follow-up. Thank you, Chair Long.
Thank you so much, Mr. Snope. Next, we're going to hear from Dana Burtness. Dana, please unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm going to try to share my screen. Here we go. I'm not as experienced with Zoom screen sharing. Did that work?
It did work.
All right, thank you. So yeah, thanks for having me here. My name is Dana Burtness. My husband and I run Nettle Valley Farm, which is in Blackhammer Township. That's down in Houston County. We're kind of near Spring Grove and Maple, if that rings a bell. I'm a pastured hog farmer, and also we run an incubator farm program for other young regenerative livestock farmers. We are also, as you can see, the brand new owners of 10 kilowatt solar system as of 2020. So first, I'd like to really thank this committee for having such a forward-looking discussion. This is a really neat thing to be a part of. So we went solar in 2020 as members of the Solar United Neighbors group. Adding solar to our farm is something that we've always wanted to do, but it's a little daunting. We weren't quite sure where to start. And so one of Sun's solar co-ops was a perfect fit for us. The solar co-ops bring people together to educate them about solar, harness the buying power of the group, and then Sun staff helps people get through the process. Sun has done co-ops throughout the state, and actually if anyone's interested, solar co-ops are open right now in Minneapolis, Duluth, the Arrowhead, and around Morris. So solar is a really natural fit for regenerative farms like mine. On our farm, we are already taking solar power in the form of organic grain and lush green pastures and happy pigs and turning it into super tasty pastured pork. Adding panels that turn that same solar power into electricity that then powers our fences and our freezers and hopefully someday an electric pork delivery vehicle. It made perfect sense for us. There's our pigs out on pasture. We worked with a local installer, Viking Electric, on our grid-tied system that on average provides all the power we need and then about 30% more. So the payback period is a very reasonable 8 to 9 years. We worked with Foresight Bank in Rochester, which has a solar loan program that's pretty neat that actually uses the solar panels themselves as the collateral. So we were not forced to take out a second mortgage on our home or our farm. We put down 15% and then they loaned us the rest. We'd love to see our state create more aggressive policies to help farmers and rural Minnesotans like me add solar to our buildings and our farms. For instance, as Minnesota sets a goal for reaching 100% renewable energy, I'm of the opinion that we need a really big commitment to solar specifically, and we need to have a carve out for distributed generation, like what I'm doing on my farm, because of the benefit to our local economy and the efficiency and the resilience of distributed generation. I read a study that Minnesota has the potential to generate 24% of its electricity just from rooftop solar. And so when you add on ground mounts like mine, that potential only increases. And I've included that study as a handout. We also need state tax credits or grants. I'm sure as many of you are familiar, Xcel Energy has a solar rewards program, but we need those same kinds of incentives nationwide, or sorry, statewide. I mean, nationwide would be great too, especially in rural communities across the state that aren't served like Xcel like us. So in closing, a huge part of the way that we combat climate change in agriculture is using soil healthy farming practices like rotational grazing and cover crops and perennials, which all have the added benefit of boosting resilience on our farms. On-farm distributed decentralized solar, again, is a perfect fit for farms because it's yet another way of boosting resilience with reduced input costs and an added revenue source. So thank you very much for having me here, and I'm happy to answer questions from the committee about our farm or our panels. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Burtness, and Representative Lee has committed us to coming down to your farm as soon as we're able.
I can't wait. I'd love to have it.
Next, we're going to hear from Sachi Graper with the Nature Conservancy. Please unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you very much, Chair Long and committee members. My name is Sachi Graper, and I'm the Climate Policy Lead for the Nature Conservancy here in Minnesota. The Nature Conservancy works to create a world where people and nature thrive, and we do that through our mission of protecting the lands and waters on which all life depends. Climate change is an urgent threat to this work. It threatens human communities through flooding and heat vulnerability, as well as non-human communities. We've seen northern forests begin to decline, and iconic species like loons, lynx, and moose begin to shift their territories northward out of Minnesota. As a state, we know we are not on track to meet our greenhouse gas emission reduction goals. We're making slow but steady progress in the transportation and electricity sectors, but emissions from the land use sector, which is our third highest source of greenhouse gases, have stayed relatively constant. The good news is we know that nature can help. If managed properly, natural and working lands offer a huge opportunity to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions. Not only can we reduce emissions through avoiding land conversion or specific practices like reduced tillage on our farms, but nature can also sequester carbon in plants and in the soil through reforestation, cover cropping, and grassland restoration. The Nature Conservancy asks the legislature to prioritize natural and working lands as a climate solution this year. A new Nature Conservancy report, which we've made available to this committee, shows that natural climate solutions can reduce economy-wide emissions by nearly 20% in Minnesota. Natural climate solutions are those practices that manage and conserve forests, agricultural lands, wetlands, or grasslands for greater carbon sequestration. Natural climate solutions can mitigate up to 26 million metric tons of carbon dioxide per year, which is as much as taking 7 coal plants offline. Although we cannot reach Minnesota's emission reduction goals without investment in natural climate solutions, they have received very little investment to date. Investment in these solutions will support industries like forestry and agriculture, boosting local economies in addition to storing carbon, cleaning our air and water, and providing a host of other co-benefits. State investment, for instance, could fund tree planting efforts or provide financing to farmers to access the types of equipment they need to implement soil health practices like cover cropping. The Nature Conservancy looks to the state of Minnesota to leverage its own resources to drive immediate climate action in the land use sector. State leadership through investment, as well as goal setting and agency action, will be essential to addressing climate change and ensuring a Minnesota, as well as a world, in which both people and nature can continue to thrive. Thank you very much for your time, and I would welcome any questions you have.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Graper. Next, we're going to hear from Shanna Mortensen with the City of Warren. Ms. Mortensen, please unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you, Chair Long and committee, for giving me the opportunity to present a sustainability project that we have been doing here in Warren. I am Shanna Mortensen, no relation to Mortensen Construction, and I'm the city administrator. Warren is a small rural city in the northwest corner of the state. Population is almost 1,600 people. And Warren has been participating in the Climate Smart Municipalities Partnership with Arnsberg, Germany. And with this partnership, we needed to do a project where we would work together, both communities across the Atlantic. So to make a much longer story short, we did both thermal imaging in our communities using drones. Warren was very lucky to partner with Northland Technical College in Thief River Falls to conduct a pilot project using their drone program. The project started in the fall of 2017. There have been many things learned with it being a pilot project, such as drones don't work in temperatures less than 32 degrees. It uses too much of the battery. Wind has to be non-existent. We're in the Red River Valley, good luck with that. And it doesn't take too much to have heat residual from a sunrise. And then heat retains on roofs for hours after sunset. So through that, they have now found that they have to conduct all the flights between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. in perfect weather conditions. Late fall is when most of the flights are conducted, as the structures also need to have their heating systems running. So the thermal imaging scans have been very useful in seeing where the greatest energy loss is occurring. All of the scanning was finished this past fall, and now they're all being stitched together. And the city is really getting excited when we'll be able to provide the data to the residents so that they can make informed decisions to where their money should go for their buildings that save them energy and money. So if someone were to buy a high efficiency furnace, but their heat is all going out the roof, they're not saving any money. In conjunction with the thermal scans, the city is developing a tariff on-bill financing program. Warren does own all of its utilities, which makes it easier to accomplish that program. During the thermal imaging project, discussion had centered around how do you encourage residents to do these energy projects? And how do residents pay for them? Lower income households can apply for assistance programs, and higher income families can afford to do them. We had found out, looking into the data, that 63% of our Warren residents make between 25 and 100,000 a year, and half of the housing stock is valued at 50,000 to 150,000. So this sector is what we feel falls between the cracks when doing these home upgrades, and a segment that we are focusing on for assisting and improving. because Warren city leaders want to be sure that everyone can benefit from the data of the scans. So Warren, right now, we're really optimistic that by using the thermal scanning and providing a loan program, sustainability efforts in the city will be increased to make a difference in climate change and make a difference in our residents' energy costs and home comfort. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about our project today. We do appreciate that.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Mortensen, and for sharing your really innovative project. We appreciate it. Next, we're going to hear from Matt Rohn. Mr. Rohn, if you could unmute yourself and begin.
Hello, Chairman Long and committee members. It's an honor to testify before you. I'm Matt Rohn with the faith-based organization Isaiah. I live in Representative Lippard's Northfield. A year ago, our city council passed an ambitious climate action plan. It pledges our community to 100% carbon-free electricity by 2030 and to be 100% carbon-free in all areas of energy, waste, etc. by 2040. It enhances resilience and adaptability while keeping a constant eye on matters of equity. Northfielders acted when it became evident some 4 years ago that federal and state governments were losing their appetite for adequate policies, right when scientists and world leaders set forth the proof that such reform was needed and could be achieved worldwide by 2050. Northfield's citizens demanded action. Northfielders had just witnessed 3 500-year floods in 5 years sweep through downtown. We could not wait for leadership at the state and federal levels. Plans created in communities throughout the state, from Senator Senjam's Rochester to Grand Marais, helped us. They call for measures in legislation you are considering. Anthropologist Carla Hansen collected in her master's thesis over 100 stories from diverse Northfielders about how climate change already had harmed them. We commissioned a professional survey in English and Spanish at the start of our planning to learn what citizens thought. 82% think about climate change at least once a week. 73% recognize the need to reduce the consumption of fossil fuel generated electricity, and 80 to 96% of respondents supported the key actions proposed for carbon reduction, adaptability, and resilience. 93% supported higher energy efficiency standards, and 95% favored replacing conventional energy sources with renewable ones. Northfield shows how people of all ages and all walks of life in our rural Minnesota community are eager for policymakers to act. But individual community climate action plans are acts of desperation. Atmospheric data and modeling, mass climate migration, and leading military and intelligence analysis show how larger scale policies are needed. Minnesota, under Republican rule, was a leader until a few years ago, but has fallen behind other states and what is needed. My faith commands me to be a good steward of all creation. I hope you see it as your duty to be good stewards of creation here in Minnesota, and will finally pass in the House and Senate needed legislation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rohn. Next, we're going to hear from Amy Frederigal with the Sustainable Growth Coalition. Ms. Frederigal, please unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you, Chair Long, and good morning to the committee. My name is Amy Frederigal, and I'm the Managing Director of the Sustainable Growth Coalition. I am going to pull up my one and only slide right now. Can you see that okay? Great.
Yes.
Great, thank you. The Sustainable Growth Coalition is a leadership group comprised of several dozen companies with their global headquarters in Minnesota, as well as partners in the public and nonprofit sectors. You can see the logos of our members on this slide, including a few of the speakers you've heard from already, GRE and Mortensen, as well as 3M and Ecolab up next. The coalition is a corporate sustainability partnership fostering cross-sector collaboration to advance a circular economy as a more prosperous alternative to the current linear economy. We are a program area of environmental initiative. Our mission is to catalyze collaboration across perspectives, power, and systems for social equity and environmental health. Our members tell us their sustainability business drivers are customers, investors, and employees. A primary benefit of the business case for sustainability, especially as it pertains to climate, is risk reduction, as well as cost reduction. Corporate climate goals manage to those risks. You will hear more about the business case from 3M and Ecolab. The last thing I wanted to highlight is that our members adopted an energy vision, which states that we want to surpass the current state greenhouse gas targets, increase access to clean energy, and fuel economic growth for all. There's more information in your packet. We're excited for you to hear from our members speaking next on the panel, Dr. John Schuler, 3M's VP and Chief Sustainability Officer, and Amelia, Ecolab's Senior VP of Corporate Sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Schuler.
Thank you very much, Chair Long, and thank you for Amy for the introduction. Mr. Chair, committee representatives, last year I had the opportunity and pleasure of speaking with you as part of this panel, and I welcome the opportunity to do so again as we all work to advance clean energy initiatives in a more sustainable future. Since we last spoke, the COVID-19 pandemic has served as a wake-up call for governments, corporations, members of the public to do more in terms of protecting the health of our planet and its people. As a global science company with products and customers across many industries and markets, 3M can generate a significant impact around the world. In fact, our customers and investors are expecting us to do so. Sustainability is at the heart of our company. It anchors our purpose-driven innovation in our products, our manufacturing products, and our new technologies, but we're always trying to do more. It's also worth noting that our customers, our employees, investors, and other stakeholders are consistently asking for bigger commitments and stronger actions. We've made significant progress on our sustainability goals since we last met. They're organized around our strategic sustainability framework of science superpower, if you will, science for circular, science for climate, and science for community. As we approach and work towards achieving our goals in these spaces, we're continuously evaluating where we can raise the bar and push harder. For example, when we met our original goal of increasing our renewable energy to 25% of our global electricity use, we met that years early. Then we doubled down and increased that goal to achieve 50% of our total use by 2025 and pledged to transition the company to 100% renewable electricity across all of our global operations. Our goals, initiatives, and programs are detailed in a brochure you received in advance of this panel, and I'd like to share a few highlights with you today. Under our Science for Circular pillar, our ambition is about designing solutions that do more with less material to advance a global circular economy in collaboration with others. At the core of these efforts is our sustainability value commitment. This requires that every new product entering our commercialization process for new products must demonstrate how it drives an impact for a greater good. A sustainability value commitment could include things like recyclable content, energy and water savings, responsible sourcing, renewable materials, reuse, or a core purpose of addressing an environmental or social issue, such as improving air quality, reducing greenhouse gases, improving personal safety, et cetera. Some key examples are our 3M automotive electrification, where technologies that we provide help provide lighter, more durable, more energy efficient, and more connected vehicles. They include disposable respirators that help reduce particulates from the air we breathe, protecting people at work, at home. And 3M Thinsulate, that is now 100% recycled featherless insulation, is the core to the Minneapolis-based outerwear brand Aska Finlayson. We're also continuing to deliver in the wind and solar space, for example, with wind blade protection tape that helps the leading edge of wind turbine blades protect against weathering in harsh environments and ultimately enhances their reliability and longevity. In our Science for Climate pillar, we partner with others to innovate, to decarbonize industry, accelerate global climate solutions, and improve our collective environmental footprint. Since March of 2019, 3M's headquarters in Maplewood has been powered with 100% renewable electricity from wind and solar sources in partnership with Xcel Energy. And they're leveraging primarily wind farms located in Pipestone, Minnesota. This was a first step for us in a commitment around it's shifting our entire global operations, 70 plus countries to 100% renewable electricity. We've also announced this week that our headquarters in 3M Canada are now also powered by 100% renewable energy in partnership with the local provider, Bulldog Power. I misspoke, it's Bullfrog Power. I'm seeing it, I'm not. Anyway, and in 2011, 3M became the first company headquartered in Minnesota to install center point electric charging vehicle stations. With increased demand, we now have 45 charging ports across our 3M Center site, and they're available for employees and visitors on a first come, first service basis. And again, also powered with 100% renewable sources. And our Science for Community, our final pillar of our strategic sustainability framework, we're committed to creating a more positive world through science and inspiring people to join us. Shortly before we spoke last year, we expanded our 2025 goals to provide 300,000 work hours of skills-based volunteerism by 3M employees to improve lives and solve society's toughest challenges around the world. But as 2020 kicked in, we learned much more about what was in store for us, and we have responded to the COVID pandemic and civil unrest in Minnesota in new ways. We responded early and rapidly in diverse ways to the pandemic, ranging from supplying critical products to dedicated frontline healthcare workers and partnering with others like Ford Motor Company and Cummins to introduce new ways of solving problems for the pandemic. We're also engaged with others around how we better deploy testing and treatments. In the wake of George Floyd's death, we paused to listen to our employees and really doubled down on what we can do. We announced our first ever Director of Social Justice and Strategic Initiatives, Garfield Bowen. And September, we announced our plan to invest $50 million over the next 5 years to address racial opportunity gaps in workforce development initiatives, and started right here in the Twin Cities with programs like the $5 million 3M Science to Improve Lives program, with the United Negro College Fund to support students from St. Paul, expansion of the 3M Manufacturing and Academic Partnerships programs with St. Paul Public Schools, and a $1 million annual investment for social justice partnerships led by our Employee Resource Networks. In November, we announced James Moman, our Vice President and Equity and Community, for the first time in that role. We know that there is much more we can do and that we must do it together. We're proud of the contributions we've made so far and committed to progress as a company. We also look forward to continued growth with crucial partnerships like the Sustainable Growth Coalition and joining together with our employees, customers, partners, and governments to do even more. Thank you very much for the opportunity to join you today.
Thank you so much for being with us, Dr. Schuler, and thanks for sharing 3M's really impressive climate leadership. Next, we're going to hear from Mr. Tenuta. If you could unmute yourself and begin.
Thank you, Chairman Long and committee members, for having Ecolab testify today. By way of background, Ecolab is based here in Minnesota, and we're a global provider of water, hygiene, and infection prevention solutions and services. And we help advance food safety, maintain clean and safe environments, obviously very important during the pandemic, and optimize water and energy use and improve operational efficiencies and sustainability in the food, healthcare, hospitality, and industrial markets in over 170 countries around the world. Now, sustainability is core to our purpose. I'm the Chief Sustainability Officer, and I have a busy role, and our approach to sustainability and climate has really two important focus areas, which I want to share with you today, really impacting industry here in the state as well as worldwide. The first is the impact we have in driving exponential operational and sustainable results through our customer operations. The second is how we work in our own operations within our enterprise to really drive responsible practices and achieve our aggressive sustainability targets, similar to what you heard from Dr. Schuler at 3M, such as climate and water, which for Ecolab includes setting science-based targets. We committed to the UN Business Ambition 1.5 degree climate pledge, which really targets to reach net zero carbon by 2050 for Ecolab and a 50% reduction by 2030. We're also going to achieve 100% renewable electricity by 2030. So we are viewed as an industry leader in our enterprise sustainability and climate impact. But our greatest impact by far is the climate action in helping our customers across more than 3 million customer locations around the world to reduce resource use and to consider how to manage industry operational water and energy that also has implications to their climate risks, as you heard from Amy. We have 25,000 of our 48,000 associates that actually work in the field with customers in Minnesota and worldwide on the front line. And here's what they see. When it comes to water and energy, it is clearly the lifeblood of manufacturing in our global economy. And climate, water, and energy are tightly connected. Essentially, you address one, you address the other. The challenges of water stress and scarcity are known. We heard from TNC earlier, but what is not perhaps appreciated is that climate change compounds water issues significantly. The effects of climate change are mostly expressed in water. If you think about it, droughts, disruptive weather events, excessive precipitation, saltwater intrusion. As a result, if you use less water, you are less vulnerable to climate change. But at the same time, if you use less water, you will use less energy, because using water takes energy, because you have to pump it, heat it, cool it, treat it in order to manage that water. It's never where you want it, of course. And because most energy is generated in the world that comes from fossil fuels, you also have this phenomena that using less water, you will also lower your carbon emissions and help mitigate the effects of climate change. So based on our findings from approximately 500 Ecolab total plant assessments, which are essentially water and energy audits that we do around different industries, for example, the food and beverage and manufacturing sector, here's what we see. On average, facilities have the potential for water savings of up to 30 to 40%. The result is that the potential energy savings from that water savings that amounts to about 15 to 20% in thermal energy, mostly from natural gas, and 1 to 4% electricity. The results vary from facility to facility, but industrial facilities can reduce their carbon emissions through those efforts by up to 20% by lowering their water consumption. While businesses may want to participate in sustainable change, I could tell the committee today, we found it incredibly effective to help our customers understand the business case for sustainability that includes the link between water, energy, and climate. So in summary, there doesn't need to be a trade-off between sustainability, climate, and business objectives. Smart solutions exist to deliver an exponential return on investment to business, to take action on operational efficiency and reduce their environmental footprint. Some of the customer examples that we've partnered with cut across over 40 different industry segments, from the automotive sector to life sciences, healthcare, and so on. In fact, some of them are based here in Minnesota, Cargill, for instance. But what's common with all of these customers is they turn to Ecolab to support their business growth objectives while achieving their sustainability and climate goals. So with that, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for having Ecolab testify today.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Sanuda, and this is a really impressive list. So thanks for Ecolab's excellent work. Our final speaker today, and then we'll turn to member questions, is Greg Downing from Cargill. So Mr. Downing, if you could unmute yourself and begin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Long, and members of the committee, and thanks for the opportunity to testify today at this important hearing. My name is Greg Downing. I'm a Sustainability Director for Climate at Cargill, and I'm happy to share with you how we're partnering with farmers and ranchers to address climate change. As background, Cargill is a privately held global agribusiness company. We have over 155,000 employees working across 70 countries. And for over 155 years, we've been working with small and large scale farmers, consumer packaged goods companies, and retailers to source, make, and move food around the world. In order to continue to fulfill our purpose of being the leader in nourishing the world in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way, we strongly believe that action has to be taken to address climate change. Agriculture is already feeling the impact of climate change. We're seeing longer, more severe droughts, catastrophic flooding from heavy rains. We also know that hot periods are getting hotter and cold periods are getting colder, and all this is limiting planting and harvesting windows in many areas. And so we know we can't wait to act, and we're not waiting to act. Like Ecolab and 3M, we've set science-based targets to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, both in our operations and in our supply chains. Those goals have been approved by the Science Based Targets Initiative, which is the globally accepted standard for ensuring that reduction goals are aligned with the Paris Climate Agreement and limiting global warming to below 2 degrees Celsius. To help us meet these goals, Cargill is supporting farmer-led efforts to adopt practices and systems foundational to regenerative agriculture across 10 million acres of cropland in North America by 2030. We're committed to supporting regenerative ag practices like reduced tillage, optimized fertilizer use, integration of livestock, and adoption of cover crops when feasible, all of which help to mitigate climate change and protect water resources, while at the same time help improve resiliency to land and add to farmer livelihoods. And we strongly believe that agriculture should be part of any comprehensive climate policy solution. As the farm economy continues to struggle, creating new markets and revenue streams for producers is critical to scaling agriculture's role in addressing climate change. Cargill's engaged in a number of projects and organizations that seek to incentivize farmers to adopt regenerative ag practices. And some of these projects are happening here in Minnesota. We're working with farmers and soil and water conservation districts, demonstration plots showcasing the benefits of cover crops and other soil health practices in Isanti and Sherburne counties. Incentives and technical assistance are critical to helping producers overcome the risk from transitioning to regenerative ag practices. And we encourage the state to complement funding and programs already at work with the U.S. Department of Agriculture to reach more farmers across Minnesota. In addition, we also believe it's important to support new markets and opportunities for farmers and ranchers in the shift to a low carbon economy. Addressing climate change provides a unique opportunity to grow the bioeconomy through increased use of plant-based renewable feedstocks and to replace fossil-based feedstocks in a variety of applications, whether that's fuels or products like plastic or clothing. And Cargill is pleased to be a partner in the new biomade facility that will be located at the University of Minnesota. Lastly, we have entered into power purchase agreements with a wind farm in South Dakota, a solar farm in Illinois, and we would love to be able to expand these types of investments, and we strongly support the state's investment in renewable power and efforts to make it more affordable and accessible broadly. So thanks for the opportunity to testify. We look forward to working with the legislature and the administration on issues around our changing climate, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Downing. This is a really exciting list, and thank you for Cargill's leadership. So we have a little over 20 minutes for questions, and we have 6 members. We're going to go in the order that people raise their hands, and I think if folks keep it concise, then we can get to everybody. We'll start with Representative Munson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have a question for Mr. Brekke if he's still on the Zoom call.
I believe he is.
Okay.
Mr. Munson.
Yeah, my question, we talked about your setting up I think it was a 1 megawatt storage facility. A lot of questions I get on energy is about how we can make alternative energy work, solar and wind, and I think storage capacity is important. Can you just confirm that you'd mentioned that it was a 1 megawatt facility that you'd set up in, I think it was Cambridge?
Mr. Brekke.
Mr. Chair, Representative, correct. 1 megawatt in Cambridge, and that's the capacity rating. and it'll have a 150-hour capability. So it can sustain output of 1 megawatt for 150 hours.
Representative Munson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to Mr. Brekke. Is that a when you say battery storage, is that like a lithium ion battery storage facility?
Mr. Brekke.
Mr. Chair, Representative, it is not lithium ion. The technology is subject to patent, so I can't share the technology behind this. But Form Energy will be making those announcements just as soon as they can. It is not lithium ion. It's something on a per megawatt hour basis. It's much, much cheaper than lithium ion.
Okay.
Representative Munson.
Yeah, thank you. And I look forward to more discussions on the battery, storage thing. I think it's a big part of this. My ask of the committee is that as we talk about this, different alternatives, that I mean, in the interest of improving the environment for the world, that we also look at the environmental impact of one of the technologies that we're implementing. I've done a lot of research when I was on the Energy Committee before, and went to with the Energy Commission to Nevada and California to study alternative energies. That we look at the environmental impact of the wind turbine blades not being recyclable with the new technologies, or they're just not being a useful byproduct. And then a lot of the energy, like Tesla's Powerwall energy storage, that uses 65% of the material is nickel, and the cobalt mining, of course, in the Congo is a human cost as well as environmental cost. And so, as we talk about these new technologies, I hope that we can have a serious conversation about the serious environmental impacts that the materials that go into these products and the recyclability have on water quality around the world. And so I look forward. I know that if a 1 megawatt storage facility sounds like a lot of energy, but during the polar vortex that happened 2 years ago, I think that the wind turbines just standing alone when they had to shut them down drew 2 megawatts of energy just to heat the oil in the gearboxes for the turbines to keep them running, or not running, but just keep them on standby. So that would have been drawing more energy just from those standalone turbines not being used. So I look forward to being a member on the committee that does ask kind of questions about the environmental impact of what we're doing. And so I thank you, Mr. Brekke and others for your time.
Representative Listlegard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just a comment and then maybe a question. But first of all, to all the speakers, thank you so much for your willingness and your commitment to work with the men and women of labor. That means a lot to the state of Minnesota, and I think that's very important moving forward. To Mr. Brekke, I guess my question is that you're shutting down your coal fire plant in Wyoming, and you're doing all of this wind. It's a two-part question. I don't know a lot about energy, but if I understand the grid in MISO, it's about affordability and it's about reliability. And I would like to know, do you know where all of the imported energy through the transmission line comes from? Is any of it coal? And then secondly, I don't know if this is to the gentleman from Mortensen or to you, where are the blades coming from? Because if we truly care about the environment, and I heard carbon free, is it truly carbon free if we're importing these raw minerals to countries that doesn't have the same standards that we have? Because my fear is that we're exporting our jobs and our conscience overseas for what? And so I believe we're heading in the right direction. I'm very happy to hear that the market is being market driven along with support to protect our climate. But I really want to know that, are we going from cradle to grave to finding out what the carbon footprint is, and are we doing it properly?
Mr. Brekke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative. Very good question about the market. The first thing I'd point out relative to the shutdown of Coal Creek Station from our portfolio is Coal Creek Station was an 1,100 megawatt coal plant. And we, instead of having Coal Creek in our portfolio, we will have 1,800 megawatts of wind. Now, it won't provide quite as much energy as what Coal Creek did, but it's close. So we are directly in our portfolio replacing coal with wind. What makes it more cost effective for us to do so is the fact that we are part of a large multi-state market that has transmission lines traversing the upper Midwest into Canada, and that's the MISO market. And in that MISO market, we can park energy when we have excess, we can buy energy when we're short. And so it's like a big battery to us. I will acknowledge that that market includes all sources of generation. So, and there's a level playing field in that market, whether you're a large solar project, a wind project connected to the grid on the transmission side, or any other type of resource. You know, we all have access to that. So sorry for the background noise here, but the market itself includes a diverse mix of resources that is becoming increasingly green in and of itself. And by Minnesota continuing to be a part of that market, we're enabling transformation, not just for our state in the short run, but in the long run for the broader MISO market by producing wind energy from Minnesota and being able to export that to other states. So I would encourage the state to continue to value that marketplace. As far as the blades, I would defer to Mortensen on the question about the blades and the technology and the development of that behind that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Brekke. Mr. Mortensen had to leave, but maybe Representative Lislegard, I can put that question to him and get that back to the committee.
Yeah, I have one other question, and so obviously, Mr. Chair, you're fully aware that I have the only and the largest solar manufacturing plant in the state of Minnesota and the upper Midwest. And when we talk about incentives and we talk about American made and made in Minnesota, is that being considered that we are doing it, we're shopping local, and is that a part of the thought process as we develop this energy policy?
Was that question for me, Mr. Representative Lislegard, or was it rhetorical?
No, that's a question for you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Representative Lislegard, yes, I think that's something that we definitely should be focused on. I know that Representative Hornstein had last session worked with the Blue Green Caucus to look at trying to have Minnesota made, American made incentives. And I know that's something that Representative Eklund and Representative Hornstein have talked about. Would certainly appreciate conversation with you, Representative Lislegard, on those ideas. I think they're good ones.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Representative Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And this question was mostly for Mr. Mortensen. And since he's not here, I don't know if there's anybody else from the construction industry.
We have a representative of labor who could probably answer your questions.
Let me ask first, and I don't know if this is most for our labor folks or I'm glad that Ms. Mortensen is here from the city of Warren too, and maybe this is something that could shed some light into this too. And so where I'm coming from is through the capital investment side, our building of government buildings and whatnot, and infrastructure. And so my question initially to Mr. Mortensen would be, one of the pushback we receive when we're asking questions around renewable energies or energy efficiencies and to our public infrastructure is that of cost. And so for our labor folks, is that a conversation that you're having with our the folks who are bidding for these construction projects with the state of Minnesota or local municipalities and really driving them towards, maybe pursuing renewable or energy efficiencies in these public buildings? And then for Ms. Mortensen, as a city administrator, how does that fact, knowing that you are at the forefront of doing some of these great work and having climate practices, how do you factor in the cost of renewable energy or energy efficiency when you are deciding on which project or which developer or construction partners to work with when you're soliciting these project proposals? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Who'd like to take the first part of Representative Lee's question? Mr. Pranis or Mr. Snope, would either of you be interested?
I defer to Mr. Snope on the building efficiency side of that, and building better buildings that might cost a little more, but produce environmental and long-term cost-saving benefits. I think he knows more than I do.
Mr. Snope.
Yeah, so I mean, from an electrician standpoint or from a building trades member standpoint, I would say that, you know, our efficiencies are in our training, and the fact that we have a very well-trained workforce ready to take on those projects usually means that we get it done right the first time and the most efficiently without having to go back and correct things. We've been training people in building efficiency and automation for many, many years. So I think we have a work crew, and our contractors can step right into those projects and really save some of that money. Also, some of the energy efficiency developers that are out there also offer things such as a guaranteed energy savings program, which helps to provide loans, and the savings pays back that interest on those. So those are available for municipalities. It's a little trickier with state-owned buildings, but there are some incentives out there and some loan programs that can help with that cost. And certainly the money savings from energy savings goes to help pay those off.
And Representative Lee, if I might just adding on to what Mr. Snope said, for bonding purposes, it has always been our belief that the front end investments are worth it, right? Whether we're talking about bridges and water systems, there's so many costs that get buried in these budgets, and in the state level, it's always easy to, you know, try to work within a limited budget and defer those costs to later. But that's what the bonding bill is so important, is because it allows those investments to be made that reduce other costs that are often hidden. And so we think that, yes, it costs a little more to build it better and more efficiently at the beginning, but those are investments that are well worth making for financial reasons, let alone the environment.
Ms. Mortensen, did you want to take the second part of Representative Lee's question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I will talk on the energy efficiency part and how it's a local economic driver. When you're doing, like, let's take roof insulation, you're going to choose a local contractor because you want those dollars to stay within your community as close as possible. It's very rarely that we will go outside of our region for a contractor, because it's, like I said, it's important to keep those dollars within your community. And when you're doing the energy efficiency projects, you might have new businesses, new contractors starting up. They're projects that are really good for somebody just out of tech school. So it'd be nice to see some state dollars go to some energy efficiency upgrading projects for residential or commercial, because that money will stay in the state and it will stay locally, and it'll just keep you know, going around the community, going around the state. So it's really important to make sure that those dollars stay here.
Representative Lee, any follow-up?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Lee. Representative Gruenhagen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, my question would be for Mr. Brekke. Okay, I got two quick questions. First, you know, and they kind of run along the same lines as Representative Lippert and Representative Munson a little bit. You know, when we had that polar vortex come down, it got to 30-some below zero. There's an article in Minneapolis Tribune that only 4% of our electricity in this state was being generated by alternatives, okay? And Representative Munson commented a little bit about it. We see California, who's gone down this green energy path, having rolling blackouts, and I don't want that in Minnesota. And because right now, solar and wind do not provide base load electricity. Now, I do appreciate the work being done on battery storage, because I think that's a key to providing a little bit more base load stability electricity with wind and solar. So do you see wind and solar being reliable during the extremes that we have here in Minnesota, whether it's warmth or sub-zero weather?
Mr. Brekke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative. Thank you for the very thoughtful question. Those are all really good issues to consider as the state looks to energy policy in the future. What I would say about that is with our transition, reliability is paramount. We recognize our responsibility to maintain a reliable power grid, as does every utility that serves consumers in Minnesota. And that can be a challenge. You know, the polar vortex that you discussed in 2019, that lasted 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So for 2 full days, we had temperatures of, 20 below Fahrenheit. And a coal pile was a comforting thing during that time. Our coal plant was running to maintain reliability. Now, in the future, we know that there's going to be a transformation afoot, and we have to maintain that reliability even without as many coal plants as we've had, and maybe someday without any coal plants. And in our portfolio, that's going to be true. We have a fleet of peaking generation that's going to carry us through. We have 1,400 megawatts of natural gas-fired peaking plants. And because of those cold winter time periods, we have to have oil backup because we get curtailed on natural gas sometimes when it's very extreme in terms of weather. Natural gas has to be prioritized for heating. So we have oil backup on site in tanks. And yes, we know that folks get concerned about climate impacts of natural gas-fired power plants, but I can tell you that the emissions from those plants is a small fraction of what you have in the coal fleet. And the peaking plants, they run 3 to 5% of the year with half the carbon on a per megawatt hour basis. So you're talking about maybe 1% of the carbon to 2% of the carbon that you have in a coal plant in our portfolio. So we want the state to recognize the importance of peaking generation to reliability. It's also true that the cheapest carbon reductions are the first ones, and the most expensive ones are chasing the last molecule out of the system on a carbon basis. So peaking plants are critical for reliability. Now, in the very long run, we need storage, and lithium-ion batteries, they can carry you through 4 hours. They can't carry you through 48 hours. And that's the type of demonstration project we want to do in Cambridge, is to actually help Minnesota get through a polar vortex. And in the meantime, we need the peaking plants. We're all trying to transform. We're all chasing carbon out as utilities. We know what we have to do, and we're working with the best partners we can find to make this transformation happen. So I think we're all in this together. We're going in the same direction. But as utilities and as GRE, we want to caution the state to be mindful of the importance of peaking plants for reliability, mindful of the need to be part of the market, the interstate power market, to achieve this, and to develop battery technology that's cheaper and longer duration than lithium ion. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chair.
Representative Gruenhagen, if we could be brief, we got 3 more questions.
Thank you for that answer. I just don't want my electricity going out when it's 100 degrees or 30 below. Okay, I really don't want it going out. And by the way, my electricity rates have been skyrocketing lately, for whatever reason. Anyway, just back to the solar and wind, the wind turbines and the solar panels. I've looked at several articles and done additional research. There's harsh chemicals and minerals in these things. In fact, some of the people who put them together actually have to wear protective gear when they're assembling them. And my concern is, do we have a plan, and is there money set aside that when they go kaput, we've got some way to deal with this, whether it's 10 or 12 years or 20 years? Because I think we're setting ourselves up if we don't have a plan for one of the biggest environmental disasters in the history of the state of Minnesota. Appreciate your response.
Representative Gruenhagen, if you don't mind, we'll return to that question in a subsequent hearing. We've got 3 questioners and 1 minute left. If that's okay with you.
It is an interesting question.
Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is about just transition, and it's really for our labor folks who are on the call. We know that to effectively do a just transition, we need to have buy-in, and it needs to come from the local level and the regional level. And I would just love to know what we can do at the state to help support that sort of transition to sustainable energy.
Maybe we'll start with Mr. Prentice this time.
Thank you, Representative Hollins. I think that planning is really important for just transition. I mean, there's lots of pieces to it, obviously, everything from the communities that have historically hosted power plants. And basically, these are the folks who agreed to have power plants in their communities, and they've kept our lights on for all these years, and we can't abandon them by just walking away, you know, with the property tax base, et cetera. And so there need to be plans to help those communities transition. I think the rest of the state owes it to those communities, including public dollars where needed, you know, whether it's, you know, Becker and helping with the bonding investments in water infrastructure so that they can do new development to try to backfill some of those jobs, et cetera. There's other communities that, you know, that have been, you know, underrepresented within the energy sector, right? I mean, in terms of, you know, communities of color that have been underrepresented that I think a lot of the utilities and the trades are working on. How do you bring more people in who would be a natural fit for some of those jobs? Remembering, and we have to always remind people, this isn't like millions of new jobs on top of existing jobs. A lot of this is a transition of the kinds of jobs. And so it's really natural workforce turnover as people retire, new folks are brought in where you have opportunities. I think the state apprenticeship, so I would point to registered apprenticeship programs, at least in all the construction related fields, the single most successful tool for bringing new folks in, you know, whether that's people in rural Minnesota or, you know, folks, you know, or communities in, you know, urban areas, you know, bringing new workforce and new workforce that has been underrepresented. Those programs are important. So whenever we prioritize apprenticeship, whether it's a requirement or incentivized or the way it's set up is competitive for those contractors through, for example, prevailing wage requirements, all of that helps to ensure that we're creating those new pathways in. And I'll just point out one of the success stories is because of Excel's efforts to prioritize local workforce on these new projects that they win projects, the Ironworkers Union, which admits people directly to apprenticeship, was able to admit additional apprentices. So folks who never would have got a chance to get a start as an ironworker, just because of a couple projects, that created enough new work for them to bring in additional people. And so our point is, these projects may last, you know, for a season, right, 6 months to build it, but that one project might bring in a couple new people who otherwise couldn't have, and then they'll go to other ironworker work, building schools and other projects. And so I think all those are opportunities, and it just needs to be incorporated in each aspect of consideration, like where do we maximize benefits?
Mr. Snope, and if you could be brief.
Thank you, Chair Long, Representative Hollins. I think Kevin really covered it really well in the just transition. I would add that IBEW represents many, many workers that work at the Becker Power Plant, Monticello, and the nuclear plant in Prairie Island. And a lot of those jobs are, you know, on the chopping block if we continue to move towards a different kind of energy source. So a slow transition to help those workers, those communities, is something that this state really needs to be aware of and look at. We certainly don't want to, you know, take jobs away from people as we make this adjustment to where we get our energy.
Representative Bowe, is your question short, I hope?
It is. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually had 3 really good questions, but since time is of the essence, I'll narrow it to one.
Thank you.
And I'll be real quick. This would be for Shanna Mortensen from the city of Warren. I'm curious if you flew over the whole city with the thermal scan, or did you have people sign up in advance, and by doing so, did they give you permission to do that, and so it's easy to contact them with the information afterwards?
Ms. Mortensen.
Thank you, Chair. We flew over the whole city. We did not have any permission from anyone prior. We held a couple of public hearings, had virtually no attendance. But the scans will be available for anyone to come in and see only their scans. It will not be available for real estate agents to come in and use that. Only the registered homeowner.
Good enough. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Bowe. And our final questioner, and thank you for bearing with us, running a few minutes over, Representative Swazinski.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair. And this question just kind of goes to maybe piggyback a little bit on Representative Listegard's question. I think he was kind of talking a little bit more locally sourcing. And just wanted to make a general question to all the testifiers who are in development. Are they committed to locally source the lithium and the copper and the nickel for the potential battery operations and expansions to that? Thank you.
Would somebody like to address Representative Swedzinski? I see Mr. Brekke.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative. So we're not able to talk about the technology behind the battery just yet, but appreciate the question. And just as soon as we're able to discuss the technology behind it, we'd love to share it. Just in general, though, you know, we're all mindful that we're part of a local community here. We're part of the local economy, and we want to support buy local whenever we can and work with local companies, local contractors, local labor, and local suppliers. So that's certainly part of our strategy as a company. Thank you.
Representative Swedzinski, any follow-up?
No, I'm good. I think we're already out of time here.
We are out of time. All right. Well, thank you all so much. This was a terrific hearing. Really appreciate everybody's testimony and great questions. We will be reconvening on Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. And until then, we are adjourned.